Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise of complex prophecy, history, and theology to give you the essential, distilled perspective.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are taking a look at one of the most dramatic and consequential prophecies in the entire Bible, Revelation chapter 18.
It's a heavy one.
It is. This chapter doesn't just, predict a collapse. It delivers the ultimate, final obituary, a thunderous poetic requiem for the world's final anti-God system, known simply as Babylon the Great.
And it's an extraordinary piece of writing, truly. Our sources really highlight a critical shift right here.
That shift from chapter 17.
Exactly. In chapter 17, we saw the judgment and the symbolic destruction of the religious system, the harlot riding the beast.
Yeah.
Chapter 18 immediately moves to the full public, commercial, and political collapse of that very same system. This Babylon is a global, multi-layered entity.
So it's not just one thing.
Not at all. It's built on religious seduction, it's enforced by political domination, and the whole thing is sustained by, commercial exploitation. It is the earthly system that reaches its absolute peak just before the return of Christ.
And I think it's really essential to set the stage for you, our listener. We are analyzing these events from a very specific prophetic perspective.
Yes, a pre-tribulation view.
Right. The narrative of Revelation, it shifts dramatically in chapter 4, following the rapture of the church. So when we read about these judgments, we understand them to be chronicling God's wrath falling on the system that dominates the globe after the church has been caught away to safety.
Exactly. The raptured saints are, in this view, observing these huge seismic shifts from the safety of God's throne room.
So our mission today is to conduct a really detailed verse-by-verse deep dive into this catastrophic collapse.
We're going to examine the laments of the world leaders, the extensive catalog of the world's greed, and we'll try to uncover the spiritual roots that are driving this destruction.
And then pull out the profound, timeless lessons this event offers believers today about, worldly entanglement and the certainty of divine justice.
That's the plan.
That sounds like a powerful journey. Okay, let's unpack this, beginning with the opening movement. The angelic proclamation and the divine decree, covering Revelation 18, verses 1 through 8.
Let's do it.
So we're jumping right in.
The scene opens with, it's one of the most magnificent displays of divine power in the entire book. We see a mighty heavenly messenger descending from heaven.
But this isn't just an ordinary angel.
Not even close. He possesses such great authority, such immense power, that the text says the very earth is illuminated, shining bright with his splendor and his glory.
That detail about the illumination is so striking. Why is that important? Why is it important that the entire earth is lit up by his glory?
Well, commentators observe that this light serves really two main purposes. First, it signifies the absolute, non-negotiable nature of the divine authority behind the decree.
So this is public.
It's as public as it gets. This isn't a secret operation. It's an undeniable judgment witnessed by all the inhabitants of the earth. And second, it serves as this stunning contrast.
Light versus dark.
Precisely. Heavenly splendor is replacing the corruption and the darkness that Babylon represented. It ensures that the world knows exactly who brought this judgment. It's not a natural disaster. It's not a political coup. It's from God.
And what he delivers isn't, a cautious memo or a quiet warning. It's a mighty shout, a loud, strong voice delivering the final earth-shaking proclamation. Babylon the Great has fallen.
And that double repetition, it's pure prophetic emphasis. In the Greek, it's episen. It stresses the certainty, the finality, and just the sheer completeness of the collapse.
It's done.
It's absolutely done. The use of the perfect tense, it has fallen. Even though the physical event is just beginning to unfold, it means it is an irreversible decree. The sources remind us this directly echoes that ancient prophecy against historical Babylon in Isaiah 21:9.
So it's speaking of a future event as if it's already happened.
Because from God's vantage point, the verdict is sealed. The judgment is already a historical fact in heaven.
So this supposedly magnificent great city is declared fallen. What becomes of it instantly? The text describes an immediate, horrifying spiritual desolation in verse 2.
It's terrifying.
Babylon becomes the habitation of devils, the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird.
This is such a profound spiritual reversal. What was meant to be the absolute pinnacle of human achievement, of wealth, and of power.
It just becomes a demonic slum.
Instantly. This imagery is a powerful metaphor demonstrating the physical manifestation of its internal spiritual corruption. What was happening on the inside is now visible on the outside.
And this has Old Testament parallels.
Oh, absolutely. The sources connect this right back to prophecies, specifically Isaiah 13 and Jeremiah 50, where judgment results in this permanent desolation, cursed ground, and a haunt for unclean creatures. Babylon, in its pride, had allowed itself to become a spiritual wasteland all along, and now its physical reality just reflects that demonic occupation.
That sets a chilling scene. But let's get to the why. Why the judgment? Verse 3 provides the precise culpability, laying out the corruption that permeated every single layer of global society. It even names 3 distinct groups.
Right, and the indictment is truly comprehensive. It shows a pervasive corruption that transcended borders and class.
It starts with the general population, doesn't it?
It does. First, we have the global population. All nations have drunk the wine of the wrath of her fornication.
What does that mean exactly?
Yeah.
The wine of her fornication.
It signifies spiritual idolatry and moral compromise on a worldwide scale. Babylon didn't just exist in a vacuum. She actively intoxicated the global culture with her seductive influence. She was an exporter of sin.
Leading nations into apostasy.
And compromise. And that kind of spiritual adultery, that fornication, inevitably provokes God's wrath. It's a cause and effect relationship.
Okay, so that's the nations. Then we see the political dimension. Second, the kings of the earth committed fornication with her.
And this defines the political layer. It means unholy alliances. Rulers compromising their divine mandate, selling out their principles for economic and political favors from Babylon.
So this is more than just standard diplomacy.
No, much more. This goes way beyond mere political cooperation. It implies active collaboration in her system of false religion, of persecution, of exploitation. They benefited from her power, so they linked their destiny to her corruption. They were all in.
And third, the economic driver, the merchants of the earth. The global commercial elite waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies or her luxurious living.
This is the commercial layer, the engine of the whole system. Their immense wealth is directly tied to supplying Babylon's insatiable demands for excess and self-indulgence.
Which is why they mourn so much later.
Exactly. As we will explore, their fundamental dependence on her financial stability is what makes their eventual wailing so intense. The sources establish this powerful truth. Political power, economic wealth, and spiritual corruption are all intertwined and mutually supportive in Babylon's final system.
Following this thunderous proclamation of doom, a second, more, compassionate voice emerges from heaven. It's speaking directly to those who may still be entangled in the system.
A very different tone.
It is. This is the urgent personal command in verse 4. Come out of her, my people.
And this is such a crucial pastoral imperative. It's aimed at the tribulation saints, those who came to faith after the church was raptured. They have to physically and spiritually separate themselves from Babylon.
And the reason is clear.
It couldn't be clearer. The purpose is detailed right there. To avoid sharing in Babylon's sins.
Which means complicity and guilt.
Right. And to avoid receiving her plagues.
Meaning the judgment and destruction.
Exactly. Don't be guilty with her and don't be judged with her.
That principle of separation is absolutely foundational to biblical theology, isn't it? What scriptural precedents really solidify this command?
Well, commentators almost universally connect this command directly to Lot fleeing Sodom in Genesis 19.
Get out before the fire falls.
That's it. He was instructed to escape quickly before God's fiery destruction fell upon the city. It's a literal physical rescue operation.
And spiritually?
Spiritually, it mirrors the New Testament call for holy separation in 2 Corinthians 6.17. Come out from among them and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing. The principle is timeless.
It really is.
Proximity and association with systems of rebellion, they lead to contamination and they lead to shared consequence. For the tribulation saints, their very lives depend on heeding this warning.
We see the urgency of this command underscored in the next verse, verse 5, which deals with God's judicial memory. Her sins aren't just recorded.
No, the imagery is that they are piled as high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities.
What does that image of sins piled high convey?
It's incredibly potent. It implies a judicial ledger that has reached its fullness. It's actually reminiscent of the ambition that built the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11, reaching toward the heavens in rebellion.
A monument of sin.
A monument of sin. Her centuries of iniquities, crimes, transgressions, especially, and we'll get to this, the blood of the saints, have accumulated to the point where God calls them up for final settlement. The source's stress. The time for patient mercy is complete. The time for decisive recompense has arrived.
And the recompense is startlingly severe. It's outlined in verse 6, what the outline calls the double payment principle. God commands Babylon to be repaid double according to her works.
This is the execution of retributive justice measure for measure. The sources interpret the double not necessarily as, twice the amount of suffering mathematically.
Well, it's not a literal 2-for-1.
Probably not. It's more likely a Hebraic way of saying suffering that is complete, full, and overwhelming, a full cup of wrath poured out without any dilution. She created a system that made others drink the cup of terror, oppression, and immorality, and now she must drink a double portion of God's judgment. It's perfect justice.
Where did Babylon go so wrong in anticipating this? Verse 7 just captures her fatal flaw. This incredible arrogance and self-deception. She boasted, "I sit a queen and am no widow and shall see no sorrow."
That statement is the epitome of human hubris. It's moral blindness on a cosmic scale.
Let's break that down. I sit a queen.
That suggests political invulnerability and self-glorification. I am in charge. I am secure.
And am no widow.
To claim no widow implies she's not vulnerable. A widow in that culture was the picture of vulnerability and dependence. She's saying she has no husband like God who can abandon her. She needs no external support. She is entirely self-sufficient.
And the confidence that she shall see no sorrow.
That's a total dismissal of divine sovereignty and any possibility of consequence. This pride, this absolute belief in her own eternal security, is the direct trigger for God's swift and devastating response.
And because of that self-deception, the destruction is immediate and complete. Verse 8 declares that the plagues, death, mourning, famine, and fire will come in one day, and she shall be utterly burned with fire.
The sources are so emphatic about that phrase, in one day. This is not a slow economic decline. It's not a gradual political erosion.
No, it's sudden, catastrophic.
It's a sudden, catastrophic judgment executed by the strong Lord God who judges her. The entire economic and political hub of the Antichrist's kingdom is reduced to ash and ruin within a single 24-hour period, shattering the illusion of stability she built on her lies.
Okay, so the narrative now pivots dramatically. We've seen the certainty of heaven's decree. Now we see the shock and grief on earth.
Complete change in perspective.
It is. If heaven is celebrating the justice of God, the earth is wailing. And what's so deeply ironic here is that the sorrow, it isn't repentance over sin.
Not at all.
It's purely self-interested grief over lost profit and lost privilege. We start with the lament of the kings in verses 9 and 10.
Right, the kings of the earth, the political elite who align themselves with Babylon, who indulge in her immorality and profited from her global power, now they're witnesses to her destruction.
They can see it happening.
They are literally seeing the smoke rising from her ruins. It's a visible, terrifying testament to the total collapse of their political foundation. Everything they built their power on is gone.
But notice their physical reaction. I find this fascinating. They don't rush in to help. They don't approach the fire. Their lament is uttered standing afar off for the fear of her torment.
This detail is so telling. It just underscores their profound self-preservation and, frankly, their moral cowardice.
They're terrified.
They're terrified that the same judgment might strike them, so they maintain a safe distance. Their sorrow is entirely for lost leverage, lost privilege, and the destruction of the system that enabled their excess. It is certainly not repentance for the sins they committed alongside her.
And like a chorus, their cry emphasizes the shocking speed of the event. Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, in one single hour your judgment has come.
This repetition of the speed, one single hour, is intended to just jar the listener. It shattered the core illusion of political power and stability that the entire world had accepted.
It's unthinkable.
It is. For 60 minutes to wipe out the world's financial and governmental nexus, the source of global political and financial gravity, it just demonstrates the ultimate futility of trusting in earthly kingdoms. It confirms that human securities are fundamentally deeply unreliable when they stand against God.
Okay, so the king's lament is brief, but the lament of the merchants, the global commercial elite, is the deepest and by far the most detailed, starting in verse 11.
This is the heart of the lamentation.
So what is the root source of their profound grief?
The source is profoundly economic, but it's almost existential. They weep and mourn for one reason. No one buys their merchandise anymore.
It's that simple.
It's that simple and that devastating. Trade has ceased. Global commerce is dead. For these people, the bottom has completely dropped out of their entire existence.
It's more than just a stock market crash.
Oh, it's their whole identity, their status, their purpose. It was all tied wholly to trade, to supplying Babylon's endless consumer demands. The loss is not just financial. They have lost their entire social role and their reason for being.
And to truly grasp the hyper-materialistic, deeply sensual culture of Babylon, the text provides this extensive, detailed catalog of materialism in verses 12 and 13.
An incredible list.
This inventory, it's nearly 28 distinct items. It isn't just a random list, is it? It functions as a profound indictment of the world's priorities, laid out in painstaking detail.
It's a staggering inventory that takes you right into the luxury life of this global capital. The list begins with the most precious items: gold, silver, jewels, and pearls.
The ultimate symbols of wealth.
Right. These represent intrinsic wealth and luxury, items that historically define sovereignty and status, things you build treasuries with.
Then we move to the exquisite textiles and clothing, the materials of sensual opulence: fine linen, purple silk, and scarlet cloth.
You have to understand the context. These are the colors and materials of royalty and excessive wealth. Purple dye, for instance, was incredibly astronomically expensive to produce in the ancient world.
So wearing it was a huge status symbol.
A massive one. The presence of silk confirms trade routes stretching across the entire globe, indicating Babylon's massive reach and its capacity to indulge in the absolute finest materials available anywhere on Earth.
Next, the exotic materials and furnishings that decorated her city and her homes. This is the stuff of luxury living.
Exactly. We see perfumed wood, often rare types like sign wood, used for fine furniture and incense ivory goods, and vessels made of every kind of expensive wood, bronze, iron, and marble.
So this shows an obsession, not just with function,
but with costly, non-essential construction and decor. These items require massive global sourcing, complex craftsmanship, and extravagant consumption. This is a throwaway culture on a grand scale.
The catalog then moves into consumables, detailing the excess of daily life, even when it comes to food and scent.
Precisely. They list cinnamon, spices, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, olive oil, fine flour, and wheat.
It's interesting that basics like flour and wheat are in that list.
That's the key. The fact that even basic foodstuffs are listed here alongside rare spices and incenses confirms that this excess permeated every stratum of life. They demanded the highest quality of everything, regardless of cost or scarcity. This entire segment is a theological statement on gluttony and materialism run absolutely wild.
And finally, we get to the infrastructure required to move all this wealth: livestock and transportation.
Cattle, sheep, horses and chariots, the beasts of burden and the conveyances necessary to maintain this immense, bustling trade hub.
And this is where the catalog takes its truly chilling, devastating turn. It culminates in the exploitation and commodification of human life itself. The list ends with two items: slaves and souls of men.
This climax is the point of moral reckoning. It's the punchline of the whole list. The sources interpret slaves as traditional chattel slavery and forced labor.
But souls of men, that sounds even darker.
It is. The Greek psyche anthropon speaks to the ultimate commodification of humanity. This can mean human trafficking, the cheap labor used to produce all the goods we just listed, or even the spiritual exploitation of people who sold their souls, their moral agency, for a chance to participate in Babylon's profitable, corrupt system.
So the whole system ran on devaluing human life.
Absolutely. The narrative is clear. The pursuit of absolute materialism and profit inevitably leads to the total devaluing of human life, reducing people to just another line item in the ledger.
The whole list serves as this overwhelming allegory of avarice and exposes the profound moral corruption of commerce when profit is the absolute god.
And the irony is just devastating. All of it, all their fancy things, their luxuries, their splendor, it all vanishes. Verse 17 laments that all this great wealth has come to naught in one single moment.
One moment.
It underscores that profound theological principle of the transience of earthly wealth built on injustice. The resources that finance depression are now utterly worthless. They are literally grieving over incinerated inventory.
The psychological pain is just palpable. Like the kings, the merchants stand afar off, terrified by the torment. They're weeping and wailing, throwing ash in the air.
Their entire foundation, their wealth, their status, their identity is gone, and it's replaced by this existential dread.
Their self-eulogy crying, how terrible, for that great city, It is almost an act of denial.
It is. They lament the city's adornment, its beauty, its gold, and its pearls, which just confirms that their value system was entirely external and material. They are, in the end, victims of their own idolatry.
The final group to mourn are the mariners, the shipmasters, captains, and sailors, all who trade by sea.
This group represents the global network, the supply chain itself.
And their participation marks the paralysis of all international trade routes.
They, too, stand afar off, watching the smoke. And they acknowledge Babylon's essential role in their cry, "What city is like unto this great city?"
They can't imagine a world without it.
They can't. It was the world's indispensable economic hub, the logistical linchpin for everything, and now it is utterly inert. The global economy is frozen.
Their final action is throwing dust on their heads, which is a powerful traditional gesture.
It's a sign of profound, overwhelming sorrow and grief. They lament that the city which made them rich through its costliness is now made desolate in 1 hour.
And there's that phrase again.
The repetition of 1 hour 3 times in this section is a narrative device to make sure the listener grasps the sheer speed and the completely unexpected nature of this collapse.
Okay, so we have seen Earth's tears. Now we transition back to heaven's triumph. Verse 20 provides this stark, jarring contrast.
It's a whiplash moment.
It is. While the world is consumed by self-pity over lost commerce, heaven receives an entirely different command.
The command is issued to heaven itself, to the holy people of God, the apostles, and the prophets, and they are commanded to rejoice over Babylon's fate.
Rejoice, that can sound harsh to modern ears.
It can, but the context is everything. This moment is the climax of divine vindication.
And the reason for the joy is made crystal clear. God hath avenged you on her.
This is crucial. This is the whole point. Babylon's fall is the definitive answer to the prayers of the martyrs, the saints whose blood was spilled across history. We saw them beneath the altar back in Revelation 6:10, crying out, "How long, O Lord?"
And this is the answer.
This is the answer. It confirms a core truth for all believers. God sees and God acts. He rectifies historical wrongs, persecution, and oppression. The joy in heaven is not malicious. It is the satisfaction of seeing perfect justice finally served on the system that was the repository of all anti-God hatred.
To emphasize the irreversible nature of this judgment, a mighty angel executes a final dramatic symbolic action in verse 21.
A powerful visual. He picks up a boulder as large as a great millstone and violently flings it into the sea.
A great millstone. Well, what's the symbolism there?
The great millstone is an ancient symbol for complete obliteration. It was used to grind grain, which is essential for life, but here it's a symbol of utter destruction.
And when it's hurled into the deep sea.
It vanishes without a trace. It's gone forever. This action symbolizes Babylon's sudden, violent, and complete destruction.
And the angel confirms this when he declares that the city and the system shall be found no more at all.
It's not just abandoned or temporarily ruined. It is permanently erased from the annals of history. It's very similar to Jeremiah 51.63, which describes the symbolic drowning of ancient Babylon. It signifies that this world system, built on exploitation and deception, is not merely failing, it is utterly, irrevocably obliterated.
The following verses, 22 and 23, they offer this truly mournful, yet beautiful poetic description of the silence that follows. It details the total collapse of society.
The sounds of life are gone.
What core functions cease forever in this ruined city?
The silence is comprehensive. Everything that defines a functioning, vibrant society just vanishes. First, there will be no sound of music, no harps, no flutes, no trumpeters. The cultural, the festive, the liturgical life is instantly gone.
The arts are dead.
Dead. Second, there will be no industry, no craftsmen of any kind, and no more milling of grain. Commercial and industrial activity ceases entirely. The means of production are destroyed.
And the description goes right to the heart of social life, the cessation of light and joy.
Yes, no lamplight will be seen, signifying a perpetual darkness, and no happy voices of the bridegroom and bride shall ever be heard there again.
So no more weddings, no more new families.
The future is canceled. This shows the desolation is total. Social, commercial, industrial, liturgical, and familial life is completely extinguished. It is an empty, silent, spiritual wasteland.
Verse 23 then reminds us of the economic scale. Babylon's merchants were the greatest in the world. But here we find the critical spiritual mechanism that gave them this control. The text names it so clearly, "By thy sorceries pharmakeia were all nations deceived."
This is a vital point for any modern analysis of this chapter. The Greek word used, pharmake, is the root of our word pharmacy.
But it's not just about medicine.
Not in the New Testament context. Here it refers to the use of drugs, potions, and often spiritual magic linked to the occult. This reveals that the commercial system wasn't just economically corrupt, it was spiritually deceptive.
How so?
It used occult influence, seductive pleasures, addictive substances, and, mind manipulation, things that enslave the minds of nations, all to maintain control and profit.
So the deception wasn't just about glossy advertising, it was deep spiritual and psychological control.
Exactly. It points to a constant spiritual battle being waged through addiction and the manipulation of thought and desire, subjugating entire populations to the Babylonian worldview.
And now we come to the final damning reason for this devastating judgment. The justification for heaven's rejoicing. It's found in the very last verse, verse 24.
The ultimate charge. It's persecution and murder. In her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth.
All that were slain. That's a huge statement.
It is. This reveals Babylon's role not just as a contemporary political power, but as the cumulative repository of all anti-God hatred and violence spanning all of human history.
It's as if God is saying every drop of righteous blood spilled across the centuries is credited to this final, ultimate expression of human rebellion.
That is the exact theological weight of the verse. The judgment of Babylon is God executing recompense for the systemic murder of his people, confirming that no injustice goes unseen or unpunished in his economy.
Wow. Okay, so that verse-by-verse analysis shows the fall of Babylon is total, it's certain, and it's divinely motivated. Now let's try to step back and synthesize this material. Before we look at the immediate earthly effects, what was happening behind the scenes spiritually that explains this magnitude of power and its subsequent collapse?
Well, the sources confirm that Babylon's power was fundamentally supernatural. It had to be. It was spiritually energized by demonic forces as it became the habitation of devils back in verse 2.
Right.
Her success was rooted in demonic seduction and the use of sorcery, that pharmakeia we just talked about in verse 23. This confirms that the final world system is not merely a human endeavor.
It's more than bad politics or greedy economics.
Much more. It's a fully orchestrated scheme of the dragon of Satan, employing political and economic means to enact its spiritual rebellion against God.
Yet the collapse itself proves the ultimate, terrifying power of heavenly sovereignty.
Precisely. The angel's authoritative descent in verse 1 and the heavenly rejoicing in verse 20, they both demonstrate that this judgment is a direct, calculated act of divine governance.
So God is always in control.
Always. Even the hostile coalitions, the rebellious hearts, and the powerful systems that align with the beast, they all operate entirely within the bounds set by God. His sovereignty is the central truth over the entire flow of history, ensuring that the prayers of the martyrs are answered at the appointed time.
Now, Revelation 18 is clearly not a standalone prophecy. It's deeply interwoven with Old Testament patterns. We see significant parallels with prophecies against earlier, proud commercial empires. Where is the strongest typological connection?
The primary parallel is, without a doubt, the devastating oracle against the Phoenician trading city of Tyre, which you can find in Ezekiel 27-28. Our sources highlight that the detailed lamentations of the merchants and mariners in Revelation 18 are almost a precise literary mirroring of Ezekiel's lament over Tyre. The structure is almost identical.
Can you elaborate on the significance of Tyre here? Why Tyre?
Tyre was the global maritime superpower of its day. It was known for its extensive trade networks, its incredible wealth, its architectural splendor. It was the Babylon of its time, in a sense.
And Ezekiel's prophecy against it.
Ezekiel's prophecy detailed its ships, its exotic cargo, its wealthy merchants, and the absolute shock of its collapse, all very, very similar to what we see here in Revelation. John is showing that the final world capital of global trade will fall in the exact same manner as Tyre did centuries earlier.
So it's a repeating pattern.
It's a pattern of extreme mercantile pride leading to sudden, total ruin. It's a powerful statement that systems built on greed always follow the same destructive path.
And we also noted the obvious connections to the collapse of ancient Babylon itself, detailed in Isaiah 13:21 and Jeremiah 50:51.
Yes, the imagery of sudden collapse, of becoming a haunt for wild beasts, the command to flee, come out of her, my people, and that cup motif of drinking God's wrath.
It's all there in the Old Testament.
It's all directly drawn from those original prophecies against the Mesopotamian city. Revelation is showing that the final end times Babylon is the ultimate spiritual culmination of all these historical empires of pride, rebellion, and oppression, a global super entity fulfilling the destiny of its ancient predecessors.
And looking to the New Testament, the chapter provides these stark illustrations for core Christian wisdom against material idolatry.
Precisely. That comprehensive catalog of luxury goods is the ultimate illustration of the warnings against materialism we find in the Gospels.
Lay not up for yourselves treasures on earth.
Exactly. Jesus explicitly warns in Matthew 6.9-81 about laying up treasures on earth where they are vulnerable to destruction versus treasures in heaven. And Paul's clear warning that the love of money is the root of all evil in 1 Timothy 6.10 that aligns perfectly with the merchant's self-centered grief over lost profits. It proves their true God was mammon.
And that call to separation.
The call to separation in verse 4 reinforces 2 Corinthians 6.17, underscoring this consistent divine directive for believers to remain distinct from systems that oppose God's moral order.
This event is so comprehensive that it touches every aspect of human experience. Let's try to analyze the emotional and psychological impact of this collapse.
Emotionally, the chapter creates this jarring dissonance between heaven and earth. It's two completely opposite reactions happening at the same time.
For the worldly elite,
For them, the kings and merchants, there is profound shock, intense grief, and outright denial. Their entire sense of self, their identity, was tied to their wealth and status.
and when that foundation vanishes in an hour,
It leads to deep psychological dread and helplessness, which you can see in their act of standing afar off. Their sorrow is purely material and self-centered. It's a profound moral failure.
and in stark contrast.
The saints and angels experience righteous awe, vindication, and absolute joy in God's justice. They see the bigger picture.
Theologically and spiritually, what does this massive, sudden collapse ultimately affirm about God and about human structures?
It affirms, above all else, God's absolute sovereignty and justice. The fall insists that spiritual corruption is systemic. The economy was inextricably linked to demonic activity and persecution.
It wasn't just a few bad actors.
No, the whole system was rotten. Theologically, it proves the utter futility of building one's life, one's city, or one's nation on idolatry, greed, and exploitation. The collapse is God actively demonstrating that there is no lasting foundation outside of his eternal kingdom.
And what is the final warning for us, socially and culturally? What does this say about society?
The chapter warns that social institutions are inherently fragile when they're built on injustice. When Babylon falls, social rupture follows immediately. Trade stops, music stops, family joy ceases.
The fabric of society unravels.
Instantly. Culturally, it condemns a society defined by hyperconsumerism and economic exploitation. It is a severe caution that economic prosperity, even global centralized power, does not grant moral legitimacy. A culture built on commodifying human souls is guaranteed to collapse. It's just a matter of when.
This analysis feels so immediately relevant. Bringing this terrifying imagery into our current context, how does Revelation 18 challenge us as individuals and cultures today?
The sources suggest profound immediate relevance. Individually, the chapter is a powerful warning against building our identities on consumption, on status, or on convenient moral compromises.
Come out of her.
That command, come out of her, from verse 4, is a timeless call for believers to constantly scrutinize their integration into the acquisitiveness, the debt culture, and the consumer cults that just saturate modern life. We have to constantly ask ourselves, are my financial practices compromising my spiritual integrity? Is my self-worth tied to the inventory I possess?
And for families, that means establishing a kind of resilience against cultural collapse, which can often be invisible.
Absolutely. Families must prioritize spiritual inheritance over material legacy. This means teaching stewardship, teaching sacrifice, and teaching clear kingdom priorities rather than simply pursuing comfort maximization or prestige. A family shaped by worship and discipleship will be resilient when a culture, which defines success solely by material accumulation, inevitably falters.
And culturally and nationally, where do we see Babylonian characteristics manifesting in the 21st century?
Well, the warning is directed at centralized global power, predatory capitalism, and unchecked consumerism. Any modern system, whether we're talking about multinational corporations, centralized financial centers, or pervasive ideological movements, can function like Babylon if it coerces, exploits, or seduces moral conscience for profit.
That list of luxury goods feels very modern.
It does. The world's high-end consumerism, reflected in that long list, is judged as a temporary fragile foundation. The modern relevance is the fragility of financial stability when it is not rooted in righteousness and justice.
Let's return to the condemnation of Babylon for her sorcery, pharmakeia, verse 23. This feels particularly relevant to contemporary society and the ways we manage information and anxiety.
It is extremely relevant. The condemnation of pharmakeia is a multifaceted warning. While it certainly includes drug use, it speaks broadly to spiritual deception and manipulation.
How does that apply today?
In a modern context, it warns against relying on chemical escapes, on addictive digital pleasures, or sophisticated technologies to manage the chaos and anxiety of life, rather than relying on the Holy Spirit and biblical truth.
So it's about what we use to cope.
It is. It points to the constant spiritual deception aimed at controlling how we think, how we spend, and how we perceive reality, often through carefully crafted media narratives and digital addiction designed to maintain commercial control.
Despite the terrifying imagery of total destruction, Revelation 18 does conclude with profound encouragement and hope for believers. What are the key takeaways for us?
First and most central is vindication and hope. The command for heaven to rejoice assures us that God sees every injustice, every drop of blood spilled, every oppression. He will bring perfect justice for all wrongs.
So our suffering is not in vain.
It is seen, and our ultimate victory through faith in Christ is absolutely assured.
Second, the call to holy separation, that phrase, come out of her, my people. It remains a timeless pastoral principle for believers today.
It encourages believers to critically evaluate their involvement in worldly systems. We have to prioritize eternal values over fleeting earthly riches. This separation isn't monastic. It's not about hiding in a monastery.
It's an active choice.
It's an intellectual and moral stand. It's a commitment to steward our resources, our time, and our attention in ways that oppose the spirit of greed, prestige, and self-reliance that characterized Babylon.
And finally, the complete, sudden destruction of the world's most powerful economic system provides great comfort, which sounds paradoxical.
It does, but it proves definitively that earthly stability is a mirage. The most powerful human systems can vanish in 60 minutes. Therefore, believers' hope rests entirely in the eternal kingdom of Christ, which cannot be shaken.
And that certainty is our strength.
It provides tremendous comfort, courage, and strength for patient endurance, knowing that while the world is mourning its loss of temporary things, believers are rejoicing in their assured eternal security.
Revelation 18 delivers a powerful, undeniable truth. The fall of Babylon the Great is the ultimate triumph of divine justice over systemic, global evil. An evil fueled entirely by greed, exploitation, and spiritual deception.
It forces us to examine where we place our ultimate allegiance. The kings and merchants of the world wept, throwing dust on their heads when their wealth, their gold, their silks, their spices, their human chattel turned to nothing in one single hour.
So here is the final provocative thought for you to mull over. What is the one thing in your own life, the one possession, the one status or security that, if lost in a single hour, would cause you the most profound existential despair? Is your ultimate security found in that temporary thing, or is your confidence placed in the Lord God who justly judges and eternally governs the earth?